That night, Red Hollow seemed deader than usual. The wind, which always carried dust through the abandoned streets, simply stopped, as if the desert itself had held its breath. I knew that silence, it wasn't the silence of peace, but the silence that portends doom. It's a silence that weighs on the bones, that makes the skin burn and the heart beat slow, as if life itself were being sucked underground. Then I heard it, at first faint, almost a whisper hidden beneath the earth. A sound that seemed lost among the dry branches of the cemetery's crooked trees. But I knew the difference between wind and agony. It was a groan, muffled, scratching the silence like nails stuck in wood. At that moment, my hand went straight to my holster. The weight of the revolver reminded me that I was still a sheriff, even if cursed, even if my star shone brighter for the dead than the living. Each step I took toward the cemetery seemed to echo louder than it should. The moon, pale and sickly, illuminated the twisted crosses, casting shadows that moved on their own, as if mocking me. And it was there, before the most recent graves, that I understood what was calling me. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't an illusion. It was a man buried alive, whose voice scratched the earth to reach me. With each step I took through the cemetery, the sound grew clearer, more insistent. It wasn't just a moan lost in the wind. Whose knocking, steady yet faint, coming from beneath the earth. 3 slow, spaced taps, as if someone was striking wood with tired hands. Then silence. And then 3 more knocks, a rhythm that left no doubt. Someone was trying to be heard. The night chill clung to my body like a damp blanket, and for a moment, even the weight of my revolver seemed useless. No bullet can silence what should already be dead. Still, I pressed on, because being sheriff in Red Hollow was never about maintaining order among the living. It was about watching over the dead who refused to rest. The wooden crosses creaked as if in time with my steps, and every shadow cast by the moon seemed to reach out toward me, trying to pull me down. Then I heard something different, a weak, choked voice, filled with desperation. "Sheriff, don't leave me here." My heart pounded. The name on the cross before me was fresh, the earth still damp, marked by shovels. I knew who was buried there, a man I myself had seen dead 2 days before. And if the dead are crying out for help, what is really keeping them underground? If you think you've heard strange things so far, stay with me until the end. Because what I saw that night in Red Hollow wasn't just a man crying out for help. It was something that defied everything I knew about death. The earth before me was stirred, as if I hadn't accepted this body. And then, for the first time, I saw with my own eyes what I'd only heard about in legends. The ground moved on its own. Small ripples in the earth rose and fell, as if someone were breathing beneath it. I knelt slowly, my fingers sinking into the cold dust, pressed my ear to the ground, and the sound came straight through, cutting like a razor, frantic knocking, nails scratching the wood, and a muffled voice repeating my name. It wasn't just a cry for help. It was a command, a summons that seemed to pull my soul into that grave. My chest tightened. The makeshift cross bore the name of Thomas Granger, buried just 2 days earlier. I had seen his lifeless body myself, pale and rigid as the moon that now illuminated his grave. And yet there he was, alive, or something close to it. But I'll tell you something. Not every coffin that moves holds a man. Sometimes you hold something that should never have come out of the darkness. If you've made it this far, don't you dare leave now. What I'm about to tell you next isn't for everyone. But if you want to understand why Red Hollow never sleeps in peace, you need to listen to the end. I gripped the shovel leaning against the cemetery fence and began digging. Each blow against the earth sounded like a gunshot in the silence. The ground seemed to resist, as if unwilling to be opened. With each layer of earth removed, a heavy smell spread, a mixture of iron, wilted flowers, and something reminiscent of rotting flesh. The air grew thick, and for a moment I thought even the moon had retreated, hidden behind dark clouds. The pounding inside the coffin became frantic. I heard nails scraping desperately against the wood, and the choked voice cried out again, "Sheriff, hurry! Don't let me die here again." Again, those words echoed like thunder inside me. How could anyone die twice? My hands were shaking, but I kept going until the shovel hit the coffin with a dry, hollow sound. The wood vibrated as if it had a life of its own. I tossed the shovel aside and finished with my bare hands, scooping out handfuls of earth until the lid was exposed. I took a deep breath. My instincts told me not to open it, to leave that man or whatever he was. But the curse I carry in my heart compels me to face the dead, to hear their cause. I placed my fingers on the cold wood and pressed. The lid creaked loudly, a macabre scream of wood against metal, and then it swung open. Inside stood Thomas Granger. His eyes were wide, filled with despair. His skin, pale and clammy, looked as if it had been sucked dry by the earth itself. His cracked lips moved, and he let out a whisper, almost voiceless. I warned you, they wouldn't let me rest. But something was wrong. His eyes reflected the moonlight in a reddish hue, as deep as mine. This wasn't just a man I'd freed. This was something bearing the same curse as me, and there, for the first time, I realized that digging that coffin might have freed more than just a body. Maybe it had freed a darkness that could never be buried again. Thomas Granger stood before me, panting, his body scarred by the earth that had swallowed him for 2 long days. His clammy, cold skin betrayed that he no longer belonged to the world of the living, but his shallow breathing and the trembling of his lips said otherwise. That contradiction chilled me to the core. I had seen the dead walk. I had heard voices coming from graves. But I had never faced someone whose gaze held such human despair and, at the same time, such supernatural malice. He tried to rise from the coffin, and I grabbed him by the shoulder. His fingers gripped my arm with a strength unbecoming of an exhausted man. His eyes met mine, and what I saw there wasn't just fear. It was a reflection of the curse I carry within me. They buried, peer me alive, he whispered hoarsely. It wasn't death that brought me here. It was punishment. Reed Hollow condemned me, but he wouldn't let me rest. His words slurred, as if each syllable were being spat out with effort. Then his voice changed, not in volume, but in tone, a deep, gravelly echo that didn't suit a man's throat. It was as if a second voice spoke alongside, intertwined with his own. They didn't want me to come back, but I always come back. My hands froze. This wasn't just Thomas Granger begging for help. It was something using his mouth, something that had found a home within him. I could tell by the way his eyes blinked at different rates, as if two consciousnesses were fighting. For the same body, he coughed hard, spitting up dirt and dark blood, and then clutched my coat desperately. Sheriff, you know what keeps me here. It's the same thing that keeps you here. My entire body shivered. Never before had anyone spoken of my curse like that. Never before had a dead man looked at me and seen not just the sheriff, but the man, bescarred by the desert. In that moment, I understood that Thomas wasn't just asking for help getting out of the grave. He was revealing that what haunts me isn't just mine. Red Hollow was full of men like him, and I might just be the next one buried alive. Thomas's gaze bored into mine like two sharp blades. I knew that kind of desperation well, but there was something else hidden behind his words. Each time he spoke, his voice was somewhere between a man's plea and the roar of something not of this world. I felt the same presence I carry with Mitha, mark of the desert, the curse that has never left me. He held my arm so tightly that his pale fingers actually hurt my skin. You know what this is, Sheriff. You know because you understand me. The same thing that lives in you lives in me. For a moment, I almost gave in. That request seemed human, seemed genuine. But my eyes weren't fooled. Within them glowed the same feverish red that haunts me every night. The same color the moon takes when the desert decides to collect its debts. It wasn't just a man trying to escape the coffin. It was the curse itself, trying to free itself through another mouth. I reached for the handle of my revolver. Cold metal brought me back to my senses. The city had seen men like him before, and I had seen what happens when we give these dead a chance to walk among the living. No amount of prayer, no amount of lying can fix it. What comes back from the earth never returns, the same as when it came down. Thomas stood up again, his lips trembling. If you bury me again, I'll come back. I always come back. You can't stop me. My hands shook, but not from fear. They shook from anger, from exhaustion, from the weight I carry as the last sheriff. Mever, town that never fully belonged to the living. I pointed the revolver at him, the barrel inches from his forehead. But I didn't pull the trigger. There weren't enough bullets in the world to kill something that was already dead. I slowly closed the coffin lid, even as I heard her screams grow higher, almost animal-like. My hands pushed against the wood until the sound died away. With each handful of earth I threw back, I felt my chest tighten as if I were the one being buried. When I finished, I stood before the newly finished cross, sweat pouring down my cold face. I touched the sheriff's star on my chest and understood that this decision didn't erase anything. It merely postponed it. Because the truth is, I hadn't buried Thomas Granger. I had buried myself. Silence fell upon the cemetery once more as the last shovel of earth fell upon the coffin. There were no more knocks, no more groans, no more muffled voices, only the weight of the wind, which finally began to blow again between the twisted crosses, as if the desert had breathed a sigh of relief. I, however, felt no relief. Every grain of earth covering Thomas Granger seemed to weigh heavily on my chest, as if I myself had been buried alongside him. The moon illuminated the sacred ground with its sickly pallor, and for a moment I thought I saw figures moving among the headstones, shadows watching silently, satisfied with my decision. I touched my sheriff's star and felt the cold metal sting my skin. Put that symbol, which once signified law and order, was now nothing more than a reminder of the curse I carried. I knew that night hadn't ended with an end, but with a beginning. Thomas wouldn't rest. He'd already said it. He would always return. And I knew, deep down, that what lay buried there wasn't just a condemned manute, was a reflection of what awaits me, a fate that trails behind me with every step into Red Hollow. To everyone else, I just buried a man. But the truth is, I buried a part of myself, and the more graves I fill, the more I feel like I'm digging my own. Because in Red Hollow, no one rests in peace, not even the sheriff. Red Hollow Cemetery fell silent again as the last shovel of dirt fell on the coffin. But it wasn't an ordinary silence. It was the kind of stillness that sticks to your bones, making the air too thick to breathe. The wind finally blew again, carrying dust and dry leaves. But instead of bringing relief, it sounded like a chorus of laments hidden in the shadows. I stood before the makeshift cross, my hands still covered in cold earth. Each beat of my heart sounded like a grave hammer, reminding me that I hadn't just buried Thomas Granger. I had buried myself all over again. Because every choice I make in this damned desert brings me closer to the same fate. A rotting coffin, a voice begging to be heard, and the certainty that no one rests in peace in Red Hollow. I looked up at the moon. It seemed larger that night, heavy, swollen with blood, as if watching my every move. It was then that I noticed figures moving among the tombstones, not with footsteps, but like breathing shadows, feeding on the fear I exuded. My fingers touched the star on my chest, and I felt the metallic chill pierce my flesh. That insignia, who was no longer a symbol of justice, but a chain that bound me to the burden of watching over the dead. Thomas had said he would return, and I knew he was right. No matter how many times I bury him, he will always find a way to dig his way back. And maybe I'm not the only one burying him. Maybe each shovelful of dirt is a promise from the desert. Sooner or later, it will. be my turn. Now, I ask you, if you were in my place, would you have closed that coffin or freed the man who was asking for help? And remember, not all the dead stay where they were left. In the next story, I'll tell of the night it wasn't a voice that called me from the earth, but a body that walked alone through the streets of Red Hollow, leaving no footprints behind.